Hi, I'm Gary and welcome to Jargon Free Help. Many of you want to know about websites. If you've got one, you want to know how to amend it, perhaps to improve it. And if you don't have one, you probably want one. Many of you need it for business and some like it for personal use as well. So I met up with Phil Franklin from Obsys, who's a web expert, to give us some tips and tricks to let us know what we should be looking out for and why websites are so important. Unfortunately, meeting him down in central London, well, whenever you don't want someone with a drill to turn up, you can guess that's exactly what happened. Hi Phil, great that you've come down to Lincoln's Inn. It's a bit cold today, I'm sorry about that. We had a couple of good days of weather, but it's not looking that good at the moment, so we'll go and get a coffee soon.
Yeah, I think I could do with a coffee.
But you're a bit of a web expert, obviously, because I know that you do that, and I've just got some questions about what people should be looking for when they're creating websites. The one thing I do hear people talking about a lot is SEO. So could you tell us a bit about what that is?
Well, search engine optimization is what it's short for. What it means is you have a website, it's there sitting on the web, but people don't necessarily know how to get there. People don't look at it, and it's not much point having a website nobody can see or look at. And what a lot of people do with the web is when they want to go on to find a website, they use search engines like Google and Yahoo and other places, and those websites, what they do is they provide a little box, people type in words or phrases or the company name they're looking for, and the search engine tries to help them by giving them a link to the websites, and it comes up with a list of possible candidates. Right. And they're quite clever, these search engines, and they find the sites for you. And the ideal one, if somebody types in the name of your company, you'd hope that it would come up near the top so that people can then find it. But what you find is some people who don't know about this, they build their websites, cheap websites, and they don't think about the search engines, and the search engines can't always find them. Search engines, they're very clever software, but they can't find everything. And if you don't build your site with them in mind, the search engine won't be able to find your site. So there are little tricks and things you can do to your site to help the search engines, and it makes your site come up top.
So what about things like using AdWords, which you would have to pay for to then be up at the top? Is that something you're trying to get around?
Well, often you don't need to do it. You can pay for AdWords if you want to, but the first thing to do is to try and come up high in the search engine without paying. And these search engines try to find the right sites for you. So imagine users, people who want to find your site, and they type something in. You can do things to your website to help the search engines find you, and that's what the search. So you're both doing the same thing. The search engines want to find you, and you want them to find you. So you have to find it. So search engine optimization is about building your site with those search engines in mind, and that's how it works.
So really, if people want to know about, like, they obviously know Jargon Free Help, and they could type that in, that would find us. But they also want to type in things like learn computers and that's where I've had to adjust the website to make that come up high on the list.
Yeah. Well, there are certain phrases and words that are obviously going to be very applicable to your site, and you can help the search engines find them. But there are some phrases which there may be hundreds of thousands of sites that are applicable to. So there's no particular reason why yours would come up to the top of those. Yeah. So there are tricks and things you can do to your site to help. But if it really is important to you to come high, then you might have to think about the AdWords then on those particular phrases that are common, and then you have to pay to appear near the top of the search engine pages.
So this is a really key thing to talk to a designer about, making sure they can do this without implementing AdWords or paying for, because there are a lot of very expensive search optimization companies.
Well, an ordinary person, when you look at a website, you can't tell just from looking at the site whether it's been written with search engines in mind. They all look very similar. But it's very important when you get your designer to build your site that you discuss that and you make sure they do it that's right for you. And there's certain very simple things you can do behind the scenes of the site to make it much easier for the search engines to find them.
So I guess one thing you could do is see what other websites these web designers have done, and then see if you can search for those websites.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
And then if you can't find them, come to someone like you who knows what they're doing.
And we can look behind the site, behind the graphic of the site, and see what they've done. And there's some very simple things you can do, some key things that the search engines use as their priority thing. And if you haven't done that properly, you've got no chance of it being found. And so many people spend quite a lot of money on a website, and then it's never found, and it's just such a waste. It's very cheap to do certain things, and if you haven't done those, there's no point in paying any extra money. You might as well do the simple things first.
Because I hear people spending fortunes on paying for like that AdWords advertising and things. And it just sounds like money down the drain. Really.
Very often it is money down the drain. Apart from the fact that you could have had it for free, so you didn't need to pay. But the second thing, often you're paying, and the people who come to you aren't the right people anyway, because you're paying for things that aren't quite right. There's a very it's quite a complex thing about what you should pay for and what the words are. There are some situations where it's worth paying a lot of money because the people who come to your site are the ones that want to buy your service, and it's worth it to you. But very often people are throwing money down the drain.
Yeah, problem is with those AdWords, when people click on them, even though they're not going to be a customer, you've still paid for them to come to your site.
Well, exactly. You have to think about what each click on your site is worth. So if somebody clicks on your site, you've paid the moment they've clicked. It could be that it's worth it to you, because if you've got the right person coming to your site and he's looking at your page, he's going to look at that and say, that's what I need. And that could be worth money. Not everyone, but if a good percentage are worth it to you, and you could think, what is one sale worth? But quite often what happens is you find they go to your site, you've paid, and they immediately realise it's not for them, and they click away straight away. So you've paid for nothing, really, and that's just such a waste.
You do a lot with content management. What exactly is content management, and why would someone need to use it?
Well, it's all about how often you want your site content to change. When you build a site, the basic sites, you've got to key in all the text and the images that get put on the site. And some people only really need to review their site maybe once a year. Some content might have changed, some things might need updating. In that case, you don't really need a content managed site, but more and more people are realising that if you want to get people to come back to your site and look at it regularly, you want to keep things moving, keep things changing and update them with the latest things. For example, it could be news that's happening in your company. So things might happen on a monthly, but maybe a weekly, even a daily. You might want to put things on the site that's happening. And if your company is such that there's things always happening, events are taking place, you might be having an open day or a seminar or something, you want to keep people informed about the date of it, and then nearer the time you want to say a reminder, and various things you might want to update. Now, a typical website, when you go to the original designer of the site, you'd have to pay them money every time they make a change, and this can be quite expensive. And what it means in practice is people don't bother to change the site, they leave it as it is, out of date. So if you get a content managed site, what that means is it gives you the ability as the owner of the site to edit the content yourself, either whenever you like, and there's no charge for that. Usually you have to pay an amount, a regular maintenance fee for a content managed site. It's usually more expensive to build a site in the first place, but forevermore you can then edit it on a daily basis or whenever you want. In a very good content managed site, you can maybe be out and about, you can type something into your phone, press a button, and your website will reflect the change, and a new thing will appear on the site. So you can take this to quite a degree.
Is content management the same as, when you want to do data collection, like get people to subscribe to a newsletter or do some shopping? Is that content management as well?
I don't actually call that content management, because that's something you can have without content management. You can just simply have a contact us page, which can have different levels of fields in it, and then people can send information to you. That's collecting information from a client to your site. Right. Content manager is more ability for you to change the site, change the way the site looks, add pages. I mean, the top content managed sites allow you to add pages on the fly. You can just create new pages when you want. You can add images when you want. If you're a builder and you've just done a job, before you go in, you take some pictures on your phone before, and you take it during, and then after you've done the work. And then when you get back home afterwards, you press a button, and they'll go onto the site. And you might need a new page for that, but a good content manager allows you to do any of that.
E-commerce is actually really important. It's something that you do. What should people be looking for? Because I've seen that there are packages to do this, but when I've actually tried them out myself, they seem like a lot of work when actually I should have just got an e-commerce expert in to do it right from the start. So what should people be looking for with e-commerce?
E-commerce is a specific example of that. Again, that's a different example. That's where you're selling things on the web. That's using your website to take money, take payments, so people can order things. So you provide information. Again, you might need content management because prices change and items you sell change, so you need to be able to update that. That's content management. But then if you want people to have the facility to actually go to your website and actually place an order and actually pay with a credit card, or at least place the order and have a basket, for example, and allow them to actually order the goods. That's e-commerce, and you need a slightly more sophisticated site to do that, because you have to think about the credit card payments, and you have to think about the contract part. You have to let them view the terms and conditions. So it's a slightly different thing, but e-commerce is about taking money over the web. That's really what it's about. E-commerce covers a whole range of things, from very simple e-commerce sites to some quite complex ones like Amazon and all those big sites. I look at each company's needs and work out the best for them. The most important thing is to think about the user experience when they're purchasing something. Right. You've got to make it as easy as possible to make the right order. If you've got quite a few different products and there's different variations of the products, it requires a bit of thought in how they're going to make the product. And the reason why companies like Amazon are doing so well is because they've thought through that really carefully. They've made the experience of ordering very good, so that they give you suggestions about other things you might want to order and things like that. And they make the basket, and they have a wish list, and you can save things, and you can go back and it remembers things. These are the kind of things you can add. And the very cheap e-commerce sites don't have that. And you can place an order, and sometimes that's fine. In certain situations, if you're just selling a few items and they're all very straightforward items, there's no problem. But anything more complex, where there's lots of options, you do need to think about it quite carefully.
The other thing is, people want to create websites on the cheap. They haven't got much money, they're just starting out. And I kind of think that that's actually not such a great idea, because if you get it wrong, people aren't going to come back to you. And I think using things like Word and Publisher that then works only on Internet Explorer is not really a great idea.
No, that's the problem, really. The trouble is, people think about the initial price of setting the thing up, and they think they might be saving some money by doing it cheaply. But the truth is, if people can't use the site, if the users have a bad experience, they won't order it. They won't order using it, and that's pointless. There's no point in having a site that people don't use.
So mobile devices have become particularly significant. I've seen that Apple have said that 65% of people using mobile web are now doing it on an iPhone, and obviously there's another 35% as well, and it's become a huge market, really, hasn't it?
Oh, very much so, yes. Now, mobile phones and the iPad as well are going to get more and more usage, and you have to think about it. When you're designing a website, you often pay quite a lot of money to the designer, and the designer thinks about the graphics and the colours and everything like that, makes it look good, but you need to think about what device it's going to be looked on, because usually they're just showing you on an ordinary PC screen, and these have standard sizes. Yeah. But some designs don't work very well when you put them on a very small screen. Yeah. And it's silly, because more people are going to be using that, and you're rather excluding those users from your site, or you're making the experience much harder. So the best sites now think about that at the beginning, and they go back to the design process and try and design their sites for lots of different applications.
Your website, opposites.co.uk, I've noticed that that's actually really good. If I look at that on my iPhone, it actually does work. But a lot of people don't get that right, and they've kind of got a hash of, you go to their website and actually just can't look at anything. There's too much information, or they've got Flash on there. So that needs to be thought out at the time of designing, and if they have got a website, they need to think about making changes to capture that market, don't they? With the iPhones and the iPads and the iPod Touches, which all use a similar sort of operating system, so they all do certain things, and also the size of them, but particularly the iPhone and the iPod Touch, the two combined, apparently there are 85 million users worldwide. I mean, that's a phenomenal user base to ignore, isn't it?
The software I use, the modern software, it's not that difficult to write options for the front end. So you build the workings of the site, and then you allow the site to have different graphical interfaces with the user. So it will check what device they're on, and it will adjust it. So you can, and there's certain things like the menus and things like that, it's much better if they're designed around the actual equipment that the person's on, because they're used to it, and they can work their way around it so much quicker.
So do you think all this fancy stuff where you've got lots of drop-down menus and things, probably,
they particularly don't work well on these little phones and things, and you're asking for trouble if you try and be too fancy. I think keep it simple is my advice, and think about the users. That's really what it's about. Think of what device they're on. Don't assume anything. Don't assume they're all on standard screens with big menu buttons they can look at. Think about they could be on little devices, and try and make it suitable for them.
So Phil, that's great. I think people are going to know a lot more about websites and what to look for, and obviously they can drop us a line if they need to know any more about it. And I think based on just how cold it is right now, it's about 7 degrees when it was 15 yesterday. I think we better go and get a coffee and take Clive with us.
Yeah.
Thanks very
we'll
much.
have
Well, as you can see, Phil is full of very good advice. So if you want to know more, either drop us a line via our website or actually visit his obsys.co.uk. He's a very helpful guy. I'm sure he'll help you out as well. So that's it for websites. And now for this week's App of the Week. So this week's app is Bump. But you need 2 iPhones at least for it, and what you do is you bump your phones together and it will swap information. You have to link them together through a network or with your Bluetooth, and you can swap contact details, and you can also swap photographs as well. So when someone next asks you for a bump, now you might know what they're talking about. You might get some strange looks from the people around you. Let's have a look at what this week's new tutorials are. Well, as we've been looking at websites, I do have some tutorials for you on how to create some websites, some very basic ones so you can actually get going, and I will be building more tutorials to show you how to make amendments to your websites as well. You may not actually use these in the end, but at least you'll know what to ask a web designer when you do actually meet them. So that's it for websites. I'm sure many of you will be rushing off to create your websites now, or to have a look at what you've got on your website and how to improve it. Don't forget to go and check and see how well yours does on Google as well. Next week, we'll be taking a look at data roaming and what you need to do when you go on holiday with your mobile phone. So thanks for watching. See you next week, and happy computing.